A fellow by the name of Garrett Ham posted a clip. And reading Athanasius' responses against the Arians is just wonderful. And when he uses the term apostolic tradition, it's always sub-biblical. In other words, it is a belief derived from Scriptures, not a belief derived from an oral tradition outside of Scriptures, which I'm not sure if that's what you were meaning in 2 Thessalonians 2:15 or not. We'll have to clarify that later. Now, it is important. The 2 Thessalonians 2:15, standard text used by Roman Catholics. I think now that John Henry Cardinal Newman has been beatified and made a doctor of the church, I don't know why you're quoting 2 Thessalonians 2:15, because you don't believe that the oral traditions that you refer to there have been passed down. You have development now. So it's a schizophrenic world to deal with Roman Catholic apologetics, because on the one hand, they'll say, oh, we're the church of 2,000 years, and what we believe was passed down by the apostles. And then when you push, oh, what's development? It was when I say apostolic tradition, I just mean nothing that has anything to do with the apostles. I mean, I'm not going to trace this stuff back that far. That's how it works. So this Garrett Ham fellow, he says in this clip that I argue that Athanasius' argument against the Arians is always sub-biblical. Actually, what I said was, if you listen, when Athanasius refers to apostolic tradition, he again is talking about the same stuff that Irenaeus did. The foundational monotheism, God's the creator of all things. This is what's been passed down. This is the Athanasius that says Scripture is sufficient for all things, for the proclamation of the truth, etc., etc. And so his argumentation against the Arians is not, well, Nicaea is an ecumenical council. No one even knew what an ecumenical council was at that time. Had no idea. That's a later development. So often, Roman Catholics will completely self-destruct, because they'll say things like, well, Ariminum and Sirmium, they weren't ecumenical councils. No one at that time had a clue what an ecumenical council was. It's just more Roman Catholic anachronism. It is the essence of Roman Catholicism. It's the essence of Eastern Orthodox handling of patristic sources, to engage in anachronism. I am more convinced than ever we are the only ones who can do church history, because we don't have to prove that the early church was us. Okay, we don't have to turn them into us. We can let them be the rather varied group that they were. We don't have any skin in the game of that was our apostolic tradition that they were passing on, etc., etc. All because we've developed all this stuff later on. So when I said what he's saying is always sub-biblical, I was saying that when he defines tradition, it is tradition based upon Scripture. It's not tradition outside of Scripture. It's not the two-source theory. It's not written tradition and oral tradition. Okay, that's what I was saying. Of course, Athanasius saturates his writings with Scripture, again, going back to the quote here, and he never sets tradition against the Bible. Of course, no Catholic denies that, nor would want to do so. Well, be careful about no Catholic. You might want to check Boston College out. However, his whole defense of the homoousios language in Nicaea binds the church to a term admittedly not in Scripture. Well, that's not the issue. He didn't even like the term. It was efficient, but he did not claim that it came from the apostles. What it embodied? Yes. The term? No. Was it useful at that point in time because the arguments of the Arians? Yes. Did he say that the apostles gave that? No, he did not. He justifies it in De Decretis and De Synodis, not by go read the text yourself, but by what the church fathers handed down. Handed down in regards to what? That term? No. What it teaches, and how does he substantiate that? From Colossians, from Philippians, from Revelation, wherever He's drawing, Gospel of John. He substantiates that not by saying this is a term that the apostles used. That's not what he's saying. He appeals to the very tradition, teaching, and faith of the Catholic Church from the beginning, which the Lord gave, the apostles preached, and the fathers kept. That's a transmission argument, not formal sola scriptura. That's a transmission argument of what? Of homoousion? No, that's not what he's saying. He is saying that the deity of Christ was believed from the beginning. And isn't it weird that it's primarily us Protestants that have developed the strongest, in-depth, exegetical, foundational defenses of the Trinity from Scripture? Not you guys. Not you guys. Not anymore. James White has conflated material sufficiency, the faith can be shown from Scripture, with formal sufficiency. Scripture needs no church to norm it. Now, who gets to define these things? I remember the first time I ever heard this this categorical distinction used was by Patrick Madrid. I think it was 1993. Who gets to define this? Because that's not exactly how Patrick defined it. When it says Scripture needs no church to norm it, well, what can norm the speech of God? What can norm the speech of God? The church is not theopneustos. If the church norms that which is theopneustos, the church must be theopneustos itself, but it's not. That doesn't make any sense. Scripture is its own norm because it's God speaking, because the norm has to come from the highest authority. I mean, we're just talking epistemology here. And if Scripture is what Scripture claims that it is, then the church can't norm it. And of course, the problem you have now is what church? Not just the Eastern Orthodox Roman Catholic argument, but the church of the papal Syllabus of Errors, the church of the Council of Trent, the church of Vatican II, or the church of Francis and Leo. Those are different churches. You can, oh no, the same thing. You can close your eyes and Pope-splain till the cows come home. The changes are obvious to anybody who's honest enough to think about it and to go, the stuff that the Pope says today is not what the Pope was saying 150 years ago. Something has changed. And you can say, well, this is the new norm, but you can't claim continuity with that old norm that said something different and, in fact, contradictory. And we've given plenty of examples. You've got the death penalty. You've got religious freedom is the most important thing, more important than sexual purity. And papal Syllabus of Errors said religious freedom was an error. So what used to be an error for the Pope teaching in his normal, you're writing this for the church. It wasn't infallible. I know. Anything you don't agree with isn't infallible. It's just, that's how infallibility works. You don't ever have to worry about something being infallible if you don't want it to be infallible. It's wonderful. Except even, unum sanctum, 1302. We define, we proclaim, we state, is absolutely necessary to be subject to the Roman Pontiff for human salvation. Except for the Muslims who now worship the one true God with us. It's like, you can sit back and go, there's no change there. No, you're Pope-splaining. It doesn't matter what the Pope would say. You'll find a way around it because that's your ultimate authority. You have to. History, facts, just Plato, put it together the way you want. Athanasius held the first, as the Catholic Church also does. His writings, however, refute the second. Well, they do not. So he was just an error in his understanding of what I'd said, of what apostolic tradition is in Athanasius. But talk about choosing the wrong guy. Athanasius, the guy that stood against church councils? The church stood alone? Athanasius contra mundum? The church, all the bishops, hundreds of them were saying, you're wrong. And what does Athanasius say? No, I'm right, and here's why. And he doesn't quote from some pope or apostolic tradition. He quotes from Scripture. You can spin circles as tightly as you want to. That's the reality. And you just might want to ask yourself, why do you have to stand on your head and twist church history over and over and over again? Oh, well, Honorius really wasn't speaking as the Pope there. And yes, for 400 years they anathematized him as a heretic, but he was still infallible. And I'm sorry. I sometimes I really feel sorry for you, given the commitment you've made to your ultimate authority. I just hope you'll find out that that's not the ultimate authority.